Thank you all for coming to listen to the fact that the sky is not falling. I would like to take a really quick little poll before we begin our paradigm shift in the next 45 minutes. How many of you have, go like this, how many of you have typed a question into ChatGPT? Go like this. All right. Emma, take it away. They know what's happening.
On those ominous words.
Keep your face close to that black thing.
Okay. So just quick introductions. We have Dr. Ruth Benander, from the Professor of English. I am Emma Farrow. I'm an instructional designer here at UC Blue Ash. And then, thank you. And then we have Alex Souders, who is currently the Director of Marketing at EST 03, a former UC Blue Ash staff member, and is on the UCBA Dean's Advisory Board. Okay. So if you have questions, which hopefully you will have questions, we have an open forum where you can submit your questions. We will have time for questions at the end of the presentation, and on every slide at the bottom of the screen you'll see the same QR code, so if you, as you keep going and you're like, oh, I have a question now, we can get you onto that same forum. It'll be on the bottom left corner of every single slide. And so Ruth is currently moderating the forum and looking at the questions. And again, if we don't have time at the end of today to answer your questions, we'll be sending out a follow-up email and posting this on Bearcats Landing as well, so you have access to those on the LTC page after this. So what we can't answer today, we will answer as soon as we get a chance. So a quick overview of the current AI landscape. So this is just a great example of how AI has improved over the last year. So this is an example of Midjourney, which is one of the image generators. This is the same prompt over the course of a year, and just the difference from the original iteration with other versions being updated to the final version in this picture. And again, you can find many of these online. You can find lots of fun AI images. But this is just an example of how much AI has been changing. And you all know this. You're seeing it in your own classes in the world itself. Currently, there are bills introduced in at least 25 states and Puerto Rico and DC to address AI, or they're forming advisory councils about AI. AI is also being used in a variety of ways. This is a select limited number of headlines, but AI is being used to distribute welfare benefits. It's being used to set bail. It's what assesses risk assessment and bail decisions. It's being used to identify breast cancer and mammograms. That's an article actually from The Lancet that was published just last week about breast cancer being AI being used to detect breast cancer and mammograms. And it's also being used in policing, as an example, to analyze massive data sets to discover trends and kind of address issues in the moment. And that's just like a very brief overview of 4 headlines. I could have picked thousands of them if they would fit. The EU, as you might know, is currently kind of the groundbreaker in legislation about this. So recently, the EU passed the AI Act, and this is kind of their framework. They are working through classifying AI in 4 different ways, and based on those 4 different ways, there are different limitations and regulations about them. So going from unacceptable to minimal risk, and what each of those levels have different requirements for how it gets policed. So that's our overview of where we are right now. So EU is currently in the forefront. They have the first kind of major legislation. It will have impacts, as we know, probably on what we see in our society. But that's the overview of where we're at right now. So that was the overview of like the big thing. Now let's see how it's actually being used in the real world.
Thank you, Emma. Can you hear me okay, everybody? Again, I'm Alex Souders. I'm the Director of Marketing at EST03. That's a brand you're not going to know. So we have two brands that have been around for a long time, AdSposure and Advertising Vehicles. You still may not know those. That's my job, by the way, that you know these brands. So I'm going to give a little spiel so you understand the framework of what we're going to talk about for just a few minutes. Advertising Vehicles does vehicle graphics around the entire United States. Anheuser-Busch, you see a big truck going on the highway and it's got Pepsi on it. Well, we do that kind of stuff. We do the big ones. We partner with large companies to provide them those types of services where they can have a portal, they have a team, and we take care of their fleet of thousands or hundreds of vehicles across the U.S. AdSposure, every time you see a bus ad in the city of Cincinnati and 9 other cities across the U.S., it's something we made sure happened. We run the sales efforts for those communities like Metro here in Cincinnati, or Tank in northern Kentucky, or in suburbs of Chicago. So we run those bus ads, and it's my job to make sure that there are businesses interested in these services. And I was invited to this session by Robin and Meg Anderson because they heard me speak to them about what we're doing in this space. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to show you some things. I am not an AI expert. What I'm going to talk about is just what we've been doing over the last year or so, I would say, in various areas, and give you one key example, very simple example, that should open your mind if you haven't played with these tools, how we can impact on a very basic level. Before we get into that, there's a list here of some really good things, and we'll get into a couple examples. And the big one we're going to talk about is Excel. Been using Excel since high school. Early 2000s, it's became pretty much standard for the work environment to use Excel on various levels. If that's just making simple formulas for sums, to very advanced uses, almost like similar to a database or an access system, right? It's still core to how many companies work, and especially every company I've worked at, but as a small marketing department of 6, 3 of which are interns, we depend on Excel. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. You know, as a marketing department, it's an easy thing to, Lorem Ipsum. Who knows what Lorem Ipsum is? We got, okay, designers in the room and some other people who've experienced it. Lorem Ipsum, for a really long time, is this Latin text that you'd use to put in as like a fill-in when you had an area that you were going to do design work in, right? Okay, I need to fill for this. Give me something. It could be, in my whole career, one of the feedbacks you'd get from someone on experience, why is there Latin on my page? I can't get past it. I'm trying to review the document. What's this garbage on my page? We don't do that anymore. I can go to pretty much any of these tools and say, this is how long. Scan this page. Look at this. Here's the base content. Just give me something. And is it great? It ain't great, but it's better than Latin, right? So just think about that, right? Why do Latin when I can give a piece that has the exact space that I'm trying to work with, and it actually could pass a test? You could read it and feel like it actually meant something. Was it great? No, and we're going to talk about that, right? But is it better than Latin? Yes, it is. AI is embedded in business software for text suggestions. I mean, guys, we use Grammarly. I'm a web developer-ish, meaning came in an area where you had to be. When I started in digital marketing, you had to use HTML. You had to build HTML Dreamweaver websites with CSS. And then when CMS systems, like we have here, where you manage it centrally, you had to use PHP, ASPX, another database language to try to learn things, right? It get a lot harder. Well, now, everybody's using systems like Wix, or you're using Elementor, or the system AEM6. So these systems, they're being embedded with suggestions to fill in that lorem ipsum, fill in that suggestion. Hey, let me give you a title suggestion. Oh, yours is bad. Let me replace it with this. Oh, you're trying to rank for SEO? Well, this is what you should put in there instead, right? So it's just right there in front of your face. I'm not having to go to OpenAI. I don't have to go to Bard. It's just in the tool I'm working. It's just popping up. Hey, man, you want to fill this in? It's built into the tools we're using, and it's coming all the time. Just every month. Oh, what? Here's the new tool it's built into. Oh, here's the new one it's built into. Grammarly. We've been using Grammarly a lot of places I work for a very long time as part of our SOP, part of our standard procedure. Write the stuff, review it, make sure it's creative, throw it into Grammarly. Is there anything weird? What about tense change? What about weird grammar problems? We still use it. It has changed dramatically. Is it still perfect for creative writing? No, it is not. But is it something that's just become a very robust and useful tool on a daily basis? Every good piece of text we have goes through the system just for a review, right? It's what we do. Word limits, social media, Twitter, these limitations on editorial pieces. My copywriter gives me something 800 words long. I need it 550. How much time can I commit to that? How much time am I paying for them to commit to that? Give it a shot. It can turn out pretty good using some of these tools. Wow, okay, you condensed that pretty well. Thank you so much. It fits in my little package and off on away it goes. So what you're going to learn in my example, though, this isn't easy. You got to have a plan. And if you don't know how to use the system, it's only going to go as far as you can take it. So we're going to get into one example. And I am not, Emma's got some really cool stuff you're going to see today. I'm not taking you out of the presentation. I'm going to do a very simple example using Excel. And I'm going to say, this is just the very minimum, right, of what the kind of things we're doing in Excel today. But this is something I thought applies in most cases as just a simple scenario. And I want to do screenshots because it doesn't work every time. And I'll talk about that too. So I didn't want to mess up during the show with you guys. So I got some pictures for you guys to see. So the biggest changes, there's no need to remember complex formulas. Oh my gosh, VLOOKUPs, index matches, people who know this stuff. It just taking that half hour, pulling up that tutorial. Where does the comma go? What's the order for this? What's the, bam. I don't do that anymore. I haven't done that in almost a year, right? And not only does it make that easier, it makes me want to do it more, right? It makes me want to use VLOOKUP because I know it's seconds away. Right? It makes me want to use those advanced features of Excel that I've been avoiding because I didn't want to take the lesson. I didn't want to be a part of that training. So now I'm actually using Excel what it was meant for, if that makes sense, in a lot of ways, because it was just complex before. Even with the guides, even with the YouTube video, great. Here comes, oh, that was the wrong one. Here's the next. More than not, Excel gets it right. Right? So that's something it's been huge across, I'd say, every function, but for marketing. We do reports every month. We do all kinds of predictions every month. It just has been awesome. So here's the example. This was we manage contracts on the Edsposure brand. I didn't want to put any numbers in here, but this is public stuff. And we're trying to grow what markets we go into. But they have existing contracts. With those existing contracts, they have a base term and they have option years that they can do. So very complex, simple, could be good for an actual class kind of situation. Well, I want to know which date is next. I want to know which date is next. And this isn't 3. There's 3,000 of these suckers in this list, right? And we're not going to manually go and count these up. And yeah, so for that column L, I need to compare all those dates in D, F, H, and J and tell me which one's coming up next. Right, which one's the next one in the list, right? I know what I need, right? Well, now instead of knowing the complex formula, I asked ChatGPT. So, hey, Excel, write an if statement formula that starts in row 2, still had to say that, compares the date in column D with the date in column N with the date in column H and the date in column J and provide the closest upcoming date that's in the future. And bam, there it is. There it is. I'm going to tell you what, I said this. I can go back. Yeah, I said that. I got to keep this with me. I did that 3 different times, though. You saw the best one. I didn't ask for an if statement one time, right? I didn't say in the future another time, right? And so you're seeing the best iteration of me trying maybe 3-4 times because there's little nuance that give you completely different answers based on the inputs that you've provided the system. But when it comes to things that are numbers-driven, formula-driven, code-driven, it's doing a very good job. It does the math right. It references some sort of base modules that are very accurate to how something's going to function, and it tends to work. So, it outputted a system here that I would never have gone this direction. I probably would have been able to solve this problem, and it would have been fun to take on for an hour. But within 3 minutes, the problem's gone, because then I plugged that in the column Del, and whammo, my dates are there. Now, I had to check it. Right? I look at that area. Hey, did it actually give me the right answer? Is it going to give me the right answer every time? How am I sure of that? How am I knowing that it gave me the right answer every time? Can I trust this in a presentation to my CEO? Right? So, there's still problems there. I have to confirm that this is working. Now, in this case, it seems to be working. And when I look at the code, I feel like it makes sense why it would be working. But that validation is becoming a huge part of what the future of AI is. Right? And that's where I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about the new baseline. That was a very simple example. When I talk about the 3 interns that we have on our team and our other 2 full-time staff, all of which are Gen Z, I believe. You never know what these moving dates on that. They're using it every day. We're a creative department. We can smell it. You can smell it on the creative work, and it doesn't smell good, right? So what we've said is there's this new baseline where your content has to be as good as what you're seeing in these systems, or better. You can't be worse, or what's going on? You're doing worse than the AI, but the AI isn't doing good. So the bar is still low when it comes to creative content, right? When I talk about writing a piece of content that achieves your SEO goal, is actually exciting and engaging to read and provide value to the reader, it struggles a little bit, right? It's regurgitating existing content, right? It's not coming up with creative, new, unique ideas very well. So that's a part of the content for creative processes that it's really set a barrier to. But for every other part of what we do, and this, guys, I wanted to keep this to a very simple example. We're seeing this in all phases of our business. Our chat services, our online phone services, accounting software. It's really impacting various modules of the business. Design. We're going to have links and other learning. P&G and other groups, they're really using tools that give them kind of storyboards or idea boards, creative boards that are very visual and very powerful and organized that they can then build good creative ideas off of. Right? So these are the kind of things that we're really trying to see as this continues to develop and grow. But I just wanted to show what a small team that's growing is using on a daily basis on a very simple level. We use the tools to enter and create stories, and then we build on that in a real good way. So it can be good for bulleted lists and creative on ideas, but then really Excel and numbers, it really works really, really well. And I'm happy to answer additional questions about any factor of what we're doing. But I'm going to tell you, it's the new baseline. Right? This is the new. You got to be able to do it at this level or higher, and now everybody's learning how to do higher. The validation is key. That's where, when you get an answer, is it true? Is it something that makes sense? Is it something that's going to be valid? Even in digital marketing and SEO, I'll give you one more example before getting off. So billboard, is a term that's used by a company that does the rankings for music. Billboard.com, the top 100 billboards. Billboards that you buy ads for is also an out-of-home mechanism you see on the highways constantly. So it can be easily confused by systems if you're talking about billboard advertising. Is it on the website? Is it on the community, out of home? Things like that happen, and you have to really learn and understand the space that there's going to be mistakes in machine learning. And if you're not ready to catch them and develop them, you're going to fall behind. Thank you, everybody.
All right, so now we're going to show some ways that, that was the real world example. Now we're looking in, not that education is not the real world, that's not what I'm saying. But we're going to look at what we can do and how we've been using it. So Ruth is going to be the computer controller behind me. It should be in the, yep. So Claude is one of the generative AI tools. It's very similar in some ways to ChatGPT. It's my preferred tool. If you come to some of the events we're going to have this year in the LTC, we'll be playing with this one among all of these tools, actually. And so Claude is really good at summarizing articles. And that could be both scary and could be helpful for you. It can help kind of summarize articles. So here I have an article about revised Bloom's taxonomy, and I'm going to ask Claude to summarize it in 500 words. Okay, this one takes a moment to process. Some of them will type as they go. This one takes a moment to process. Please work. Here we go. And so in 500 words, you can specify word limits. As Alex said, we can do all different types of things. And it will go through the reading, it will go through a video, it will go through a transcript and summarize things. So here we have our 500 words finishing up. That's one tool, summarizing articles. You've probably heard about Google's Bard. This one is really good, Ruth and I have found, for outlining and for titles. I'm terrible at creative titles, but here I'm going to have it write an outline for a paper discussing the key differences between the original Bloom's taxonomy and the revised Bloom's taxonomy. And so we'll press enter. Again, this one takes a minute to process. And here we have an outline. And I haven't checked this one, but when I did this yesterday preparing for this, the outlines were pretty accurate for what we would expect from kind of discussing the key differences. Now, notice that I'm asking for it to do an outline, not write a paper, because this is where we as instructors can build the information, and this is where the resources and things have to come in that students are doing their research and building. But it can help guide in an outline.
Somebody did ask, will our robot overlords be kind? Please note that Bard hopes this outline is helpful! Exclamation point.
So, in order to help find research, for example, this is Ruth's favorite tool is Elicit, which is a research website. And so here I've entered Revise Bloom's Taxonomy. I pre-type because I type terribly when I'm under pressure. And so here it has gone through some of the resources, some of the articles available. It gives me a brief abstract summary so I can go and then find it myself. I can go to the UC Library's website, I can go find the actual articles and really go in depth about what is actually there. So it can streamline some of the research, finding good resources, and then it's up to the reader then to be able to actually use them. The last one, as an instructor, writing a rubric is really complicated sometimes. This isn't perfect, but I've entered the prompt for a hypothetical essay. And this may not be a perfect rubric, but it can give me a starting point. So if you have been someone not using rubrics in the past, and you're like, I'd like to try more rubrics in my class, having something like this kind of start the process is helpful. But in my original prompt, I had to tell it how many pages, how many words, what kind of style I was looking for, if citations were important. I feed that information in. I can't just say write a rubric and get something that would actually be usable. And here it actually can give me, this is the first time I've seen these comments, but it's giving me some suggested comments for students based on their work. Did not give me those yesterday, so this is a new change. All right. So, now I'm sensing some fear and some concern. Some of the faces were a little bit like, oh, what have we gotten ourselves into? So, when we're talking about AI, we're really talking about kind of two worlds. One, as instructors, we have to worry about making sure students are actually learning our learning objectives. They need to get certain information from your course, from your program, to be effective in their career in the program itself. And so thinking about this, knowing that students are using AI, and because it's in a variety of ways, I'll show other ways that it's being built into tools, there's kind of this view of two lanes. And this is from the work from Danny Liu from the University of Sydney. But the idea of the first lane are things that are more in person. Those are the assurances of learning objectives. You are in person and able to do things in a class. It could be asynchronous. We have other suggestions for asynchronous courses. Ruth will get into that in a second. But it's you being able to actually see the students thinking behind it. That's the one side of kind of looking at assignments and work going forward. The other part is looking at the human-AI collaboration. So it's not just having AI replace what we do, because as we've said multiple times, validation is key. I happen to know that those Bloom's taxonomy things were correct, because I happen to know that content. But as a student, we've all seen that they don't necessarily know that that's correct. They'll turn in things that don't make sense. And so thinking about AI as a tool to collaborate with, and not as a replacement for what they're learning in your course. So short-term kind of things, like things you're thinking about for this semester, for example, would be having students use AI to brainstorm and draft outlines, like the example I gave. Summarizing resources, performing some basic research, using Elicit to kind of look for topics, which can be really hard for students to kind of do. Then they have to go into the libraries and find the actual sources. It doesn't find the sources for them, but it helps them kind of go through the variety of resources there are. There are a lot of filter options on that I didn't get into, but there are lots of ways to refine some of those searches. Longer term, it's talking about having students show their thinking and show their process working with AI that's the learning process. How are you documenting how you're working with AI in the assignment? And then looking at the process. Because as we move forward, AI is not going away, and it's going to be a skill that students are going to need for success in the workforce, in career, in education going forward. It's not going away, as we know.
So you should be concerned. You should absolutely be concerned. I remember when email first came to Raymond Walters College, and everybody flipped out because it was more work. Then we got Blackboard. God, it was more work. Then we got Canvas, and it was even more work. Then everything went online and it was more work. So I'm very happy to say that the pattern is now consistent. This is going to be more work because we need to think about how we're working with our assignments and how this new participant of the large language models is part of what we're doing. So one of the things, so here's Bloom's taxonomy that we've been kind of reviewing for you through our examples. Understand and remember are now no longer worth testing and quizzing on, even though we want our students to do these things. Because these are the easiest things for our large language model friends to help our students out with, as you noted in some of the examples. So we have to think about taking understand and remember into, this really highlights active learning for us, which the CESI said we did well. So yeah, we have to think about if we want to assess how our students are understanding and remembering things, this is part of that precious face-to-face time that we have. Or if we're doing this in an asynchronous class, we have to think of ways to really engage students in participating in understanding and remembering rather than fill-in-the-blank quizzes or rather than doing a discussion board where it says summarize the reading. You see the problem with that one already, right? So what we really want to think about now is when we design things for homework, we want our students to practice analyzing and applying. Because do you remember when calculators came out? Who here is old enough to remember, oh my gosh, no one's going to be able to do math anymore, right? So this is kind of the same thing. We flipped out about calculators, but now we've incorporated calculators. So now we can flip out about this. I hope in the English department everyone is completely flipping out because this really changes what we do. But analyze and apply is where we want to be now. So if you're looking for things to how am I going to redesign my assignments, analyze and apply is the place that you want to be thinking about. Now, as Alex told us quite clearly with fabulous examples, this is where our large language model friends are not so good. That you can really tell whether something is working or not. So if you're asking someone to apply Bloom's taxonomy to this classroom, they're not going to be able to do it. So you want to think of, we want to bring all our excellent principles of teaching and learning into what we're doing, apply it to your real life. Think about how you're experiencing this. Take the ideas of this class and think about how they function in your experience. This is where we can really make the content of our classes most effective for our students. And they can use the support of all these large language models that will be able to help them out. If we're looking for the final aspect of the assessment of what a student understands, remembers, knows about what we've been trying to teach them, we have to look at this in terms of evaluate and create. So if we just pop up to the top of Bloom's taxonomy when we're designing our final assessments, this will really help us understand the student's experience of our course and how they are interacting with the content of the course. Is this more work? Yeah, these are harder assignments to create. These are harder assignments to assess. Do they take more time? Yeah, but we can adjust. We can do it because these are the ones that are fun for us to see the students getting involved with them. So the principle, when you're trying to think about how am I going to deal with AI that can do all this stuff, is teach the students how to get AI to help, or the large language models, to help them understand and remember things so that when they come into class or when they're doing their assignments, they can apply and analyze what's happening so that you can then assess them on whether they're able to evaluate and create knowledge based on what's happening in the class. So examples of some of the assignments, in-person and hybrid courses. One of the things that I'm experimenting with that has definitely made my life a lot more exciting and difficult is the Wiki Teach. Wikiedu.org got a boatload of money, and now they're all coming, they've created this Teach with Wikipedia in as much as they have a huge staff that will assign someone to you. You have to apply, and then they give you this great construct, probably created with AI, and you get your students to contribute to global knowledge. Now, the way this Wikipedia used to be a place to plagiarize, yay! But in fact, Wikipedia took this really seriously, and they've decided that this is a place where you can trust and verify, meaning that every sentence has to have a citation. When you summarize an article, you have to summarize the key information for this topic with a citation. And Wikipedia will do the citations for you too, which is really lovely because it's AMA and it's challenging. So what they're trying to do is build up the World Encyclopedia with real knowledge. One of the problems of Wikipedia is that it's mostly about war and video games. So, and not a lot of biographies of women, of a diversity of people from different cultures and backgrounds. So they're trying to get students at the university who have access to our expensive databases to begin to read through the articles, correct them, add information, and so they give you this huge infrastructure to try and do it. I look forward next semester to giving you a workshop on how well this actually works. So the experiment starts Tuesday for me. However, daily process blogs are another way to be able to use Canvas to find out how your students are processing the information in your class. So that if you have a series of reflective assignments at the end of each class, you can use the quizzes in Canvas to do this. It's not a real quiz. It's a way to get students to be able to submit what's happening. What was most interesting to you? What was hardest to understand? What do you need to know more about? So this is looking at the student's experience of the information, but it's not just for you, it's for the student to understand how they are processing what they know. In addition, the in-class applications of readings or in-person discussions become really, really important in processing information with other people and through their personal experience of the information. You can use, and if you're assigning research papers or if you're assigning discussion board entries, you really need to think about redesigning those because you'll be able to feel the generic flavor that comes through the robot overlords doing your students' homework. So pay attention to tone because the blander it gets, the less likely it's your student. Now, Claudia did ask about how well is Turnitin able to discover these things, and it's getting less and less reliable to be able to say, is this AI or not? So that's the, but we'll get there. In distance learning courses, student video conferences have turned out to make a really big difference. That making time to be able to talk to someone about what they know is important, and you can tell a whole lot from that. Is it more work? We've already gone over that, yes. The portfolio process does also become really important because if you have a student collecting their work over time, they are able to see their process of learning, you are able to see that process of learning, and you can also say, what did OpenAI give you for that assignment? Post it here. Tell me how you changed it. So to be able to have that active engagement, make the process visible, this is where ePortfolios will really help us. Let me know if you want a workshop. Also chunking of large assignments so that you can see the process of how students are working through something. Because if they do the whole, research paper in one shot through OpenAI, they're not going to have a process to show you. So emphasize how important that process is. And as Alex said, you can ask it to do the whole research paper. Not going to be very good, so you're going to have to do a bunch of editing. Woo! Still learning, still learning, still learning. And then finally, authentic audio feedback to direct revisions with the rationale is a really great way to do this. A lot of type, now you'll notice, I don't know if you read those comments that OpenAI gave. Students would spot those as bland and unhelpful. They know. You can hear students talking afterwards. Oh, those were canned comments. I'm not paying attention to that. Yes, you need it to be personalized. Anyway, it's a whole lot easier when you're doing audio commentary. Do students like that? No, they have to play the whole audio. Go! Oh, that's why we're professionals.
All right, so getting back to the Turnitin. So the only UC-approved tool for AI detection, and I put that in quotations intentionally, is Turnitin. Things to know about when you're considering other tools. So there are a variety of other tools on the market. They all work about the same because they're not great because there's a lot of factors. So you should know that detection tools are biased against students whose first language is not English because of how language is taught in a kind of college level. So know that that is something that is a known flag, it's a known bias in the detection models. You should also, if you're using another tool outside of Turnitin, and even in Turnitin, when you're feeding student work into these models, you are training these detectors and models, which you're thinking, oh, I want it to detect the AI, I want it to detect those things. But you're also feeding it student work. And the ethics of feeding that, like what you're doing, like just kind of thinking about the ethical issues there, that's also true about using AI, any of these kind of large language models, generative AI, you're training it for free. You are giving it all the information it needs to get better, and you're getting nothing out of it. So one of the big ethical issues with AI detection is that when you're feeding it student work, you're training it, and you're also feeding it work that belongs to someone else, same kind of plagiarism kind of issues. They're not very effective, as I'm sure you've all heard, but the higher the percentage on the tracker, the better it is. So if you're seeing something like 11 or 35%, may not be the biggest flag, but if you're seeing huge numbers, I've been hearing things like 65% or higher is where you should be looking. It's kind of up to you what that looks like, but there are ways to kind of, in the process of the writing, to prevent some of those things from happening. The great news is that it is up to you how you want to address AI in your class. It is up to you to have the policy, and I have confirmed multiple times with Tamisha, who's in charge of our code of conduct, misconduct violations here, that as long as it is in your syllabus, whatever your policy is, UC will support you in that. So if you're, this is an example of the definition of plagiarism in the student code of conduct. Right there it says, or the internet without reference. Right there that counts. So as long as you are clearing your policy and your syllabus to students, we will support you in whatever the outcome is. And so that works for any kind of policy. If you're allowing for collaboration, but it has to have citations, that's fine. If you're going to say no AI, here are my boundaries, that's also fine. As long as it's in your syllabus, UC will support you. And we are waiting for a policy from Faculty Senate or guidelines from Faculty Senate. Those should be coming this year. If you're like, students can use AI, sure, but they've got to cite it, I have citations for you. So these are 3 of the most common citations I have seen working with faculty. We have APA, MLA, and Chicago. Not AMA, sorry, didn't look that one up. There are ways to cite, and so we'll send these slides out, and each of these hyperlinks right there is actually the documentation or the web page from each of those organizations talking through how to cite. I will say the MLA citation guidelines are beautiful. They tell you everything for images. They go way in depth on how to think through it. Chicago is a little bit more lenient because the house footnotes work a little differently. APA also had some pretty thorough guidance. So if you're willing to let students use AI, as long as they cite it, there are ways to require citations just like you would for any other kind of source they use in your course. I think that's everything. Yes.
So as Emma and I are going to work with the questions, and we'll drag Alex up when it becomes necessary. First, thanks, Alex, for the Excel formula generator info. This will come in handy with data analysis of educational research, so score. We already went over whether the overlords will be kind. If you're still concerned about that, please read the Murderbot Diaries, which is an excellent series on that. And also watch WALL-E back-to-back with Ex Machina. That will give you a lovely spread of how to think about this. Assuming that students will be accessing ChatGPT, yes, they are. No assumption necessary, you know that. How do we make them aware of its drawbacks, limitations, and errors? So use it in class. One of my nervous first assignments is going to be, we're going to do a biography for your About Me page. Type your name in, ask for it. Students can say no, they do not need to. but I'll do it for myself and show them the biography that's going to generate for me and why I'm going to have to fix it. So facing it straight on.
Because the biography will be, it knows nothing about Ruth Benander, and it will decide that she has climbed a mountain and, gone to the moon and invented all types of things. It makes it up. It's a story. No different than anything else. And that's a great example.
And so so come at it head on and say, here's how it works.
Similarly, I think talking to students about the biases. So I talked about the biases in the detectors right now. There also, we know, are biases in the tools themselves. They are trained on the same kind of, they're trained on what's on the internet. And so the same kind of biases that exist in society exist in the things large language models or generative AI in general are creating. And so this week, there's been a whole bunch of headlines of people trying to break it, telling AI, getting AI to decide how to destroy humanity, all types of headlines this week about this, because different companies are actively working to figure out how to break it so they can then work backwards to try and prevent that from happening. So these are things that are known, and it is something to tell students and kind of talk to students about, just like there are biases in sources we use for various reasons in courses, talking about that also. This is no different than those kind of biases that exist in society.
Do students need accounts to use these tools? Should we feel comfortable asking them to create accounts? Well, the empire is alive and well. Your Google will get you into a lot of these. Some of them you do have to pay for. A lot of the visual ones are pretty expensive and you have to pay for them. Elicit's free. OpenAI is free for the moment.
But OpenAI does require an account, so you do have to sign up with your account.
But it'll take Google.
It will take Google, but I will also say that another known problem is that they will sell data. This is also how they're doing some of this, right? That's not free. You're giving them free information, they're using it. I think other tools I showed, Claude requires an account.
But it takes Google.
It takes Google. I think Bard might be the only one that didn't require an account.
Bard does not require an account.
So of the four I showed, Bard is the only one that does not require an account.
And a lot of others do require you to pay. Should you feel comfortable asking them to create accounts? No? Or move on?
If you are interested in trying one of these tools, however, this year, I think it's on the second Thursday, you'll see it in the LTC announcements, I will be having an AI play and learn session, which is really just a drop-in time for you to try a different tool. Every month, we're going to be kind of looking at a different tool so you can kind of see what it's like without creating an account yourself. And so you can kind of see the limitations and also the potential uses for the different tools. So our first one is going to be ChatGPT because we have to start with the biggest name.
Will AI in math and science be addressed in this or other AI discussions? Well, Chegg's been here for how long? And Chegg's been part of that. In everything that applies to Chegg, all the heartache and challenges of Chegg are just expanded here, except there are more wrong answers. Because in Chegg, it's a lot of human beings who are doing some of the right. I mean, you'll get more accurate information from Chegg than you will from from OpenAI because it will make things up and it doesn't have as much human support. But again, we go back to the taxonomy. Whether for all of these things, if you want, understand, and remember, that's something you have to do in class. And Krista, the Wood. Krista. So, Krista Wood has done this group work with little erasy boards. Oh, what's the technical term? You had a great technical term for it. Whiteboard, erasy board. Sorry about that. I should have Googled it. The whiteboards, that is absolutely the way to deal with know and understand in class, to get the students to take the information, analyze, and evaluate in class to make that happen. Is it more work? Does it suck up more time? Oh, human beings, why does it take so long to learn? Yeah. So anyway, there we are. And but all the struggle you've had with Chegg is just amplified now, although it's a little less difficult because a lot of the AI is wrong. Thanks for the Excel. Oh, yeah. How can a student cite an AI model when the AI model is already stealing the information from somewhere else? Yeah, welcome to the 21st century.
This is getting us into the spiral
of the
challenge. Yes.
Yep, it's fraught. F-R-A-U-G-H-T. Fraught. What do you think is the long-term viability of these models given copyright lawsuits and the enormous computing power that they require? We're still the wave is not crested yet. We're still waiting to see what happens. It's like every week something's different. So keep an eye on it. We don't know. Again, Murderbot Diaries, Ex Machina, Wally.
I think it'll be interesting this coming year. One, because now we're at a year where we've actually had these models and they've been continued to expand. There have been several lawsuits, mainly addressing music most recently, but also some things with writing and comedy. Sarah Silverman filed a lawsuit, for example, recently. There was a headline. So we'll be seeing what's happening with some of that, like legality of this. The other thing is the tools are now going behind paywalls. So, for example, DALL-E 2, which is OpenAI's image generator, 6 months ago was free and now is behind a paywall. So these tools are, now that they're trained, they're beginning to go behind paywalls and they're requiring you to pay. ChatGPT 4, the most recent version, is behind a paywall. It has a lot of other plugins and add-ins you can do. But so things are, like, the landscape is constantly changing. Things are going behind paywall because they want to make their money somehow. And so just know that, like, what is today is going to be a different presentation we do this next year, for example, because we'd be in a very different spot in terms of this technology.
And as Alex pointed out, Alex, is it not so that the AI is embedded in the software that you use? It will automatically give you suggestions in the bottom left-hand corner?
Yeah, so talking about stuff that's rolling out, and we've been waiting for the one, you talk about what we do in Excel, when's it going to be right there as the new version of Paperclip, right? What we already wanted Paperclip to be back in the day, this little dude who helped you out. Now he's actually going to do some cool stuff, right? And we're waiting for that to be added. But every single tool we use, it's just, if either it's online or I'm getting the email newsletter, hey, our AI model, because it's a hot buzz item, finding those key ways where it actually makes a difference. But in like code, page preparation, a lot of number crunching, making little artificial databases out of Excel. It's very good at that, and it's just the beginning, and it's going to be built into all these tools.
It's already built in the web design that you use, right?
Yeah, so we use Elementor on top of WordPress. Elementor is the #1 platform on WordPress, which is the #1 open source platform for web development in the world. It's used for most sites that are small AEM6 for us at UC because it's such a big environment here. But Elementor has a paid edition now for AI assistance for the creation of content. Like I said, we play with it. It's not as good as our content, even with, English student or communication student interns can write better than what this AI system can generate for sure. It's not even close, especially when you have limited chance to make an impact on the reader. I hope that helps. But yeah, I mean, almost every tool that we use, it's coming in some way.
So the AI may no longer, it's gonna keep looking different, so keep an eye on it. Our last question for the moment is, should students use their UC email and password to make AI accounts? Should we go about advising these scenarios because they will use their username and password? Wikipedia says don't use your name, make up an account, make up some other name, use a different password. For many of these things, as David points out, there are real challenges about where your information is going and how they find you. So, no.
From an information security perspective, it should not be anything affiliated with any kind of personal information that could be out there. I've been attending lots of workshops and doing lots of work on this summer. And one of the things that is coming out more and more is that while AI, as we've been saying, is we have these major tools, Claude is a major tool, ChatGPT is a major tool, those are major tools. The ones that are built into third-party things, I get an email every day of 5 new AI tools to consider. Those tools are usually based on the current existing tools. And so they don't have the control of all the information. So it's like this idea that the first party versus the third party tools and things that are paid and have an account are a little bit different, but some of these free third-party tools that will promise to make your life easier and provide all the information you possibly need for everything, those you need to make sure you're just reading the information really clearly in those policies, because how they sell your data, what their security is, all of these things are up in the air right now. And that's not anything different than any other tool you might be using, but that is a big concern, is we have so many of this proliferation of these tools all of a sudden. What kind of information security is there? What kind of data privacy and security is there?
So our summary is active learning, emphasize process, be totally transparent about what it means to be using these things. And we'll see what happens. Thank you all so much for taking time to think about this.